Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Now I've got the clip-on mic on, which in theory shouldn't pick up too much of the rain. If I wait for a gap in the rain, we could be here all day and it might get dark. It's just a wet day, forecast, so you know, not a big surprise. It saves me watering anything outside, we like all that. Thanks to those who I tried out a live broadcast yesterday. I was fiddling with some settings because, as some of you will know, the laptop crashed earlier in the year and the whole drive got wiped basically, so I lost all my software and everything like that. And because I haven't had to do a live broadcast, a lot of it I didn't bother reinstalling, if you see what I mean, but I thought I need to get this going, and there was an ulterior motive as well. So basically I had to reinstall the software that goes with the game capture card and configure that from memory. There aren't that many settings, and with the power of this laptop, with the added bonus of a good graphics card in there with its own large amount of memory, processing power, I don't need to worry about reducing settings to get it to work. So I've just set everything at I just set everything at quite a high level, basically get a good quality picture and sound. So that didn't take long to set up. That then goes into a intermediary piece of software. I mean, I use Streamlabs OBS. There's two versions of that. One of them is pretty flipping complicated. The number of settings you can fiddle with is absolutely ridiculous. But there is a simplified version where you just, it's not far off, switch it on and it works. So I installed that one this time round. They need to talk to each other. And then the intermediary software, the OBS software, also needs to talk to YouTube to actually get the live broadcast to work. So fiddled with it all and turned it all on with the assumption that I would be sitting there on my own, and it turns out I wasn't. People started popping up left, right and centre, and because I was busy trying to change things, look at things and do stuff, quite honestly, I just let the chat get on with it, and people started talking amongst themselves about the weather and all that sort of stuff. So those of you joined in, great. Those of you that stayed till the end got an added bonus. Thanks for the emails. Yeah, you know who you are. And we will do our thing at, what did I say again? 4 o'clock this afternoon, wasn't it? 1600 British summertime this afternoon. And don't worry if you can't make it. What I want to do can be done with just a few. It's not going to be very easy to do with just one, so I hope more than one turn up, but I don't need lots of people to try the things out that I've got in my head that I need to be able to do. So those selected few, see you then, and thanks for that in advance, and let's just hope it all works. I still haven't actually tried out getting this camera to do the job, because obviously most people just use their laptop or their phone camera as part of what they're doing. I want this camera. I don't want the laptop camera. So I'll play with that after I've recorded this and got it sorted. Right, subject today really is something some of us, many of us, most of us might like to do, which is go back knowing what you know now and start again. Well, you can't. Sometimes that happens. I mean, I've known people for various reasons lose a whole collection, so they're in a position where they have to start again. Some people move house, which involves moving countries, and have to leave everything behind, so when they get to their new place they've got to start again. So it can happen, but these are the sort of thoughts anyway. Now the first main thing is, it's a silly question, it's not, it's going to trigger a thought that's not right. It's how am I going to grow? Now I don't mean the looking after the orchids bit, I mean cool, intermediate, warm. Yeah, this is a major decision, and some of that will be controlled by where you live, because you know, I mean, if you live in like tropical Florida, you're going to have a job to grow cool. So even thinking about it's going to involve a lot of difficulties, but I'm going to go over those because you can still do it. And likewise, if you live up in the freezing north of the various places where you can live north, or very far south where it's cold, you don't get the heat, trying to grow warm would be not the best selection. Intermediate hits the middle. That doesn't mean to say it's your best choice. And the choices are going to be geared up to gadgets, basically. You can grow any of those three environments anywhere in the world, as long as it's not dark. You do need light, or you could chuck in auxiliary lighting, grow lights. You can even get round that. You can grow orchids in a black room with no windows if you start introducing lights. So it can be done. But let's start up the cool end. For those who are in a cool place, you've got very little work to do. The fact that you live in a cool place either means you're pretty high up, which means your day lengths may still be those of the tropical day lengths. That would be ideal to grow cool, is to grow high up. So you've not got the temperatures, you have got the light. Now, anything that you try and grow that doesn't want high light can just be shaded. That is just so simple to do, wherever. That really doesn't matter. So that's the easy bit, is shading. Yeah, but shading can be used to help keep things cooler. But not in this case. We're growing cool, so we need things to stay cool. A suitable building for growing cool is not made of glass, unless you live in that very high up place or very cool place where it just doesn't get warm. But sun on glass will warm up the inside. Yeah. So, well, if we're not going to have glass, what are we going to have then? A nice cool growing environment, depending on whether it's ever going to get any sun on it. But if it's going to be positioned in a place where the sun could get on it, then pick the aspect that would get the most possible sun and make that a brick wall so that it can't get through. Job done. So now it can creep round either end in the morning and the late afternoon and come in through the ends. So, and then extend that wall halfway up around the sides and front. Now the only glass you've got is halfway up the sides, halfway up the front, not through the back, and some sort of opaque roof that's not clear. You don't need clear glass on the roof. That again depends on how high the sun gets in where you're going to grow. As I said, if you live near the equator but can get up high enough, you can grow cool. But boy, is your light level going to be strong. You'll need to shade. Most of the cooler growers do not need high light, but you can't say that across the board. But most don't need high light, so you don't need to worry about lighting. The idea is to keep the heat out, and if it gets really, really cold, where this environment is, and it gets too cold, you might need a little bit of heating for those seriously cold aspects. But most what are classed as cool to cold growers can go down to about 5 degrees reasonably safely, between 5 and 6, something like that. I'm not going to do exact temperatures, it varies. A lot of it depends on how wet they are at the roots. So that's the cool growing. You don't have to live in a cool environment, but if you live in a warm environment, first of all, shut the sun out as best you can, and the next thing is you're going to need a cooling unit. You're going to need to cool the air down in your grow space. Yeah. Now that can even be part of a house. You can have a specific room where you set your temperature low, and you have a unit of some sort of air conditioning or something like that, that keeps those temperatures low. So it can be done. We're not covering cost here. This is if cost didn't matter. A lot of people grow cooler because they think it's cheaper. Well, if you live in a cool place, then yes it is, because you'll hardly ever need any heating. But if you live in such an area, the chances are your day lengths are going to go right down in the winter. You might need some lights just to keep that day length. Somebody actually put a question up in the comment and said that it was about grow lights, and if you put grow lights up, you stop effectively some of what the seasonal changes that might happen for some of the orchids. Yes, that would be true if you held the day length high by using the lights. Now, we've always said that most of the tropical orchids fluctuate between 11 hours daylight and 13 hours daylight. That's the difference between their sort of summer winter thing, the tilt of the earth and all that. We did that last time. The idea is, somewhere like me, the day lengths go down to 8 hours. It's so short that by the time it gets light and the light's weak and the plants start to respond, it's starting to get dark again, so they basically shut down. Oh. So I thought that was thunder. It's a jet. It's taking off from the airport. They start suddenly because they go purr, 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 purr around to the end of the runway, and then whoosh, everything kicks off. And away they go up into that weather. And then eventually break out the top into the sunshine. That's a magic moment, if you like flying. Yes, so the idea is that as the day lengths start to get shorter, you introduce the lighting at around 11 hours day lengths, and all you do is hold it there and not let it start dropping any more than that, and that keeps them, as far as the light is concerned, in their comfort zone. Yeah, because that would be what would naturally happen. So that's what the lights are for. They're not to, you know, but I mean, on a day like today, you could have additional lighting on all day just to get the light level back up to what it ought to be this time of year. So that's lights. That applies to all of the types of growing. That's more to do with where you live. Are you going to get short day lengths? If you are, you might want to think about some lights to hold them at that magic 11 and a half hours. Right, so that's the cool end. Now if we come on to intermediate, this is the most common, I would say, and it's what most people have naturally got in their home. So there's not a lot to say about it, is it? It shouldn't get that cold in your home. As I say, most people don't sit around in their house with their flipping gloves and scarf and fur coat on, do they? You know, you like to be comfortable in your home. Most people don't keep their temperatures at that comfortable level 24/7. They tend to do it during the time when they're around, when they're out of, you know, they've got their lazy A's out of bed and are actually up and about. But when you go to bed, most people like it to cool down a bit. So you've naturally got a drop, you know, a difference between your day and your night temperature. So that works for most homes. And some places, again, if you live in a very, very hot place, you've probably got air conditioning to stop the inside of your home getting too hot. So you're intermediate automatically. Yeah, most homes come into that category either via devices or because they just naturally are. Now last night it must have been colder than I was expecting, and colder than they said on the forecast. When I got downstairs this morning, the kitchen was 18 degrees. Well, in your dressing gown that's too flipping cold, so I put the heating on, and I came out here and it was down to 15. Yeah, so that's okay for most of what's in here. Half a dozen or so in here, that's starting to push my luck. It's starting to get a bit below their comfort zone. Vandas, Psychopsis, and a few others. Cattleyas are classed as warmer growers, but they'll take that temperature, no problem. They can go down a bit lower than that, and they'll be okay, as long as they're not soaking wet. But yeah, I do have a few that are classed as warmer growers that are not happy. The few Phalaenopsis that I've got in here don't like it that cold. You know, they'd prefer not to drop below 18, and they prefer it quite a bit warmer than that, to be truthful. So intermediate is the easiest to do as far as temperatures are concerned. I will need a heater through the winter months to stop my nighttime temperatures dropping down too much. Yeah, I do have to sacrifice a bit of the house heat when we get really cold days where the daytime temperatures don't come up much above freezing. It does happen. My heater would have to be on all day. Yeah, so what I do is I open this door, because I've got the heating on in the house when it's that cold, and some of that heating filters out here because I'm going to have it on anyway. So it's not like wasted heat, if you see what I mean, or wasted energy, which is wasted pounds. Those are best quality English pounds. We don't like wasting them. Right, so that's intermediate. Now you can go halfway, because although we say there's these three sections, cool, intermediate and warm, you can sit on the boundary and class yourself as, oh, I'm at the top end of cool and at the low end of intermediate. You're like on the boundary. So you don't ever get really warm, but then you don't get that cold either. You're in between. That opens up your options as to what you can grow straight away. Yeah. Once you get up into full intermediate, you probably can grow the biggest range of orchid types in that environment than you can in the other two, either end. So that's intermediate. When you get up to the warm end, if you live in a warm country, you can do it naturally. You might need a little bit of supplemental heat for night times, depending on adverse weather that's not normal for the country where you live. If your country where you live doesn't ever drop down below 18 degrees, most people would say, think yourself lucky, but I know there's a lot of people live in hot places like that where it's too much. It's every day, it's just constant, it can wear you down, especially if the humidity's high as well. It's not comfortable living conditions, but it's great for the plants. So when you get up into the warm end, quite honestly, the number of plants you can grow drops off. It doesn't actually increase, because some plants don't like to get too warm. There's a boundary. It's many plants have got an upper limit of comfort at around 26 to 28 degrees C, and when it gets above that, they don't die, but they shut down, because they're losing their moisture from inside the plant at a rate they can't cope with. They can't replace it, so they just close down. That will mean they stop growing. They're not dying, they're just not growing very right, because their environment's not right. It's gone over a boundary line too much. Yeah, so you can get too hot. But it does open up. You know, you could grow loads of Psychopsis. There are a lot of different types and hybrids. Renantheras, Vandas spring to mind. Ones that I'm struggling with in my winter. All three of those are not going to like my winter. If you can create an environment that never drops down below about 20 degrees and doesn't go above 30, and you can keep the humidity high, and you can get those lower ends down near the 20 or a bit below, and the higher ends up to 30, and keep your light levels at 12 to 13 hours at good light, you've just created the environment that the mass producers use. Why do you think their Phalaenopsis can go from out of the flask to blooming in less than 2 years? It's because they're in that sort of environment. It's constant. Plus it's the type of food they use as well, and various other little bits. But it's basically because they've got that environment right. They've got the 13 hours of daylight. They've got the right level of daylight. Yeah, as well as the length of daylight. They've got that top temperature of 28 degrees with the right humidity every single day, and they don't let it drop down too much while they're growing the plants. Until such time as they know they're capable of blooming, then they drop down a little bit more at night and kick off the spikes. It's all controlled. It's all electronic as well. If you go into some of those environments, you see acres and acres of plants as far as the eye can see, and then there's another one next door as far as the eye, and there's not a soul in sight. It's all automated. There's a bloke on the gate that just sort of lifts his head up as you go in. Well, what do you want? We don't have people. Because most of those places you are not allowed in, because some of what they're growing is the next season's blooms that have yet to be seen, apart from a very few select people. So if you're going to grow up the warm end, a lot of the warmer growers are not necessarily highlight orchids. In fact, some of them are quite shady type of orchids. So you've still got to control your light levels. Yeah. And again, if you've got a structure that you want to keep warm, the chances are this time it would be nice to have it all glass. Yeah. But you will still want to shade. And I'll say it again, if you can get your shading away from your glass, the bigger the gap up to a point, the better it will work as far as stopping heat getting in. Yeah? You've also got to bear in mind you might want to stop heat getting out. Because if you're going to grow warm and you don't live in a suitable area, like me here, if I wanted to grow warm, I'd be desperately trying to stop the heat getting out of here, you know. So I'd have to work hard at that, you know, perhaps have separate glazing panels with a good sort of inch and a half gap between them to stop the heat escaping, seal up all the joints, you know, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, those 3 temperature ranges, if you choose the range that's most suited to the area that you live, it won't cost you so much to support it. That's the way I sort of look at it. If money is no object to you, do what you like. Choose. Have 3 separate growing environments and grow all 3. That'll be the day. But, you know, some people who keep orchids and grow orchids are wealthy people. I've seen some of the houses on the YouTube channels, you know. That's why you don't get to see my house. But yes, you know, if money's no object, you really can do as you please. But for most of us, our budgets are not unlimited. They do have some limitations. Other limitations can be the other half in there going, is that another flipping orchid you've got? And on that note, I'll just this morning I went in to have a look at how well the limited edition mug is doing, and it's done very, very well. Thanks for everybody who purchased it, and thanks to who, I don't know who it was because I can't look into those details. I suppose I could, but I don't. Somebody's put in a big order and ordered like 3 or 4 items all at once. Oh, thanks. It's unexpected. I thought the only people going in there would be just after the limited edition mug. There are still some left, by the way. I think there's either 7 or 8 left till it reaches its limit, so there are still some. But while I was in there, I've done 2 new ranges. Now they are a comfort t-shirt, a standard t-shirt. So the comfort t-shirt is just a bit more loose and floppy, basically, for the more ample people. For the porkers. Includes me at the moment. But you know, I've had to put several of my shirts up one end and don't get them out of the wardrobe anymore because they won't do up down the front. They're all bulging at the buttons. Oh. So be it, but I am trying to do something about it. But yeah, so there's the classic t-shirt, the comfort t-shirt, the crew neck sweatshirts, and the mug in each of the 2 ranges. And the 2 ranges, one of them's called Just One More. Does that give you a hint? The text is just one more orchid, I promise. And then the other one's called Honestly, the range, and the text on that is, honestly, I don't need any more orchids. So there's some new stuff in there as well, and certainly over the next few days, as we get into the weekdays, the actual store might start appearing underneath the videos like you see on other channels. You have to get to 10,000 for that to be allowed, so that should kick in. But it does say it can take 2 to 3 business days for things that have been created to come across to YouTube, which in my case is the whole lot. There's all got to come across at once, and then hopefully when it gets there I can order it and get rid of some of the stuff. I don't want to get rid of it, but I don't want it right up the front of the store. I'd rather keep the stuff I like the most and I think is going to be most popular at the front. So I've still got that to fiddle around with once it gets there, because it's not there yet. So there we go, that's the Sunday chat. And as I said, whichever of those 3 zones you choose, if you choose one that's more suited to where you live and the sort of habitat, the sort of environment you've naturally got, you'll work less hard and struggle less at trying to keep your orchids comfortable by choosing the right orchids for those 3 and then maintaining that environment. And with all of those environments, humidity, I can't stress enough, is paramount. It's got to be there for them to do exceptionally well. But there are a selection of orchids that can be quite happy in the home where the humidity level is quite low, and they'll still do okay. They might do better in a more controlled environment, but nonetheless they do fine. But if you've got an environment that can be enclosed in any shape or form, get that humidity up and your plants will do better. Don't push it too much for the wrong sort of plants though. You get things like cattleyas that need a wet dry cycle. You keep them in 90% humidity, you're liable to rot off your new growth. So that's not natural for them, it's too high. Yeah. Whereas if you're growing, you know, Restrepias, Masdevallias and stuff like that, 90% actually suits them. Yeah, they like it. Perhaps 80, 85, not 90 for Restrepias, definitely, and a lot of Draculas will love that. You might not, but then it's cool. And keeping humidity up in cool temperatures is easy. If you're capable of chucking some water on the floor, a lot of the time that's all you ever need to do. And if, like me, you've got a lot of mounted orchids, when I water these mounts, there's a lot of dripping on the floor going on. Hurricane Hector hasn't come on for days, not at all, not once. So, you know, I could turn it, I could unplug it now. It'll hardly be used now for another 4 months probably, just on the very odd prolonged sunny afternoon or something like that. So those are your environments, and as I said, there are selected orchids. Most of the places that sell orchids will tell you which one of those 3 environments the orchid is best suited to. That doesn't mean it won't grow in the others, it's just its comfort zone. That's all they're trying to say, really. So there we go. And pick your orchids with care. Get orchids that suit your temperature range. They should do okay. You know, you've got those, it's the main things, isn't it? Get them potted right, don't let that get stale and go off. Yeah, make that suitable for the type of orchid. So that's what's underground sorted out straight away, and quite honestly that's where most things go wrong. Get your light levels right, get your temperatures right, get your humidity right. Yeah, and some of that will naturally occur without you having to struggle if you choose an environment that suits where you live. Yeah, and as I said, you can live on the equator on the top of the mountain and grow cold. And you will need your gloves and scarf on. I've been up there, I know. Well, that wasn't the equator, but you know what I mean. It's the elevation that dictates. Now in this country, in the UK, there's even though it's a, you know, when you look at a map of the world, there's this tiny little bit just stuck out on the edge of Europe sort of thing. It really is a poxy little place. Boots far too big as well. But if you take that, even in an environment like ours, the different average temperatures throughout the seasons where I live on the south coast are completely different to those that live in Scotland or even in the north of England. So it can vary a lot. So there we go. Those are the 3 environments. I will, when I produce this, I'll actually do pop-ups with the recommended temperature ranges for night and day for those categories, just so that you've got a bit of, you know, sort of written down information sort of thing. But don't forget, they're not set in stone. You can push either end gently, don't go mad. You know, if it says a maximum of 21 degrees, then 35 is too flipping warm. If it says a minimum night temperature of 18, then 10 is too cold. You know, don't push the boundaries too much and you'll be safe. And for those people I will be seeing later on, looking forward to it. As I said, I will be there are tasks. I will be asking people to do things as I try things out. So you're not just coming to sit down with a cup of coffee and enjoy. You've got to take part. And I'll see you later. And for the rest of you, thanks for dropping by. Thanks for getting me up past that 10,000 subscribers. And don't forget the merchandise. As I said, there's some new stuff over there that you might like. You'll have to find it. But as I said, it's the Honesty range and the Just One More range. Those are the 2 new lots that I've put in. And I'll see you next time.